I have received relatively few honors or noteworthy distinctions in my life thus far. There is the singular honor I will never forget of having been the very first female altar server at St. Matthew's Catholic Church in Posey County, Indiana. I remember the musty, yeasty, winey smells of the sacristy, the linen alb cool upon my shoulders, the heavy Bible resting in the crook of my elbows, all 70 pounds of me held down to earth with the ballast of that holy book. Thick with gold and bright red ribbons, I remember the liberative story of the liturgy, the smells and the bells and the glory and the monotony of it all woven together. I loved it all. And in time, being properly trained, I was set up on the usual altar server rotation, let's say third Sundays. And I learned that on third Sundays, I would be serving at Mass, not with our regular priest, but with the once-a-month guest priest who filled in when the regular guy was out of town. We will call him Father Bamey. And he and we were essentially the B team at St. Matthew's Catholic Church. We were the backup liturgical actors. The new kid, a girl no less, with pink sparkly glasses and a home perm, and the second string priest, who was altogether crankier and more boring than the rather hip regular guy. What a pair we were on third Sundays. Who can say how the whole thing went in the beginning of that first service, when whichever goddess of church administration set the altar server schedule at St. Matthew's Catholic Church thrust us into contact with one another? I don't remember the beginning of that first Sunday morning service at all, but I remember the end. You see, in the pivotal moment after communion at St. Matthew's, there was this ritual where the priest cleaned the chalice and the paten free from the last holy drops and crumbs of the sacrament. And I was trained that it was my job to pour just a little bit of water from a tiny cut glass pitcher into the chalice, whereupon the priest would swish it around a little bit, drink the water, and wipe the whole thing clean with this little embroidered cloth I would also handily provide, kind of like a waiter at a fancy restaurant. And when we got to that part of the service, I was all set with my little cloth. I was all set with my water. My hands somehow looked more sanctified by holding that little vessel. And I remember walking up to Father Bamey all full of eagerness, all ready to pour it in and begin the process of these sacred and ancient ablutions. But as my hands rose up to meet him, inexplicably, instead of holding out the cup for me to fill, he raised his hand up too, still holding that chalice and looking me right in the eye. He raised his hands high above my head, so I reached higher with that little jug of water. And then he reached higher with the cup, and I went up on my tippy toes with that water, and he raised that cup so high that victory on my part would have required me to go back to the sacristy, locate a trampoline, jump with all my might, and slam dunk that holy water in the chalice, which I'm pretty sure I would have done if I'd have thought of it. From my perspective, surely I was doing it wrong. Surely there was something I had forgotten. Surely if I just kept trying, his hands would come down and my hands would go up and they would meet in the middle like they were supposed to, and the holy water would pour, and surely I thought I was doing it wrong. That is the sum total of my memory of that day. I do not actually know how the situation resolved itself. But my mother, out in the pews, So proud, so dear, and so ferociously devoted to me, she watched that whole drama from a different perspective. From her angle. The cup went up, my hands went up, the cup went up, my hands went up, and in the moment when I went up on my tiptoes, so desperately frightened to the bone that I was doing it wrong, she heard and she felt the entire congregation as they gasped as one body. One great intake of collective breath. Because the congregation, and especially my mother, they knew what I did not know. Namely, that Father Bamey reached the sacrament so far above me, stretching the distance between his hands and mine for one reason only. Because I was a girl. And the whole congregation, save me, could surmise he didn't think I belonged in the chancel. So he made his point. And I suppose we all went home. Mom incensed, me just confused. And yet the next time the third Sunday of the month rolled around again, guess where we all were? Right there, in that chancel, doing what you do on Sunday morning. With my mom in the front row, fiercely watching the players in the drama of human interaction met once again on the stage of social change. And we didn't do it because any of us were heroes. We did it because the goddess of the St. Matthew's Catholic Church altar server schedule did not see fit to put us anywhere else. We were right there, and we stayed there. On every third Sunday, from then on, I held out the water and he held out the cup, and our hands met, and the liturgy happened Sunday after Sunday, month after month, and in and out of years, we were stuck with each other, showing up for the magic long enough that the magic actually happened. And today, Father Bamey not only serves among a whole slew of female altar servers, he's even gone so far as to speak favorably about the ordination of women in the Catholic Church. We have come a long way, baby. And again, I say that this meeting of hands and this sea change of possibility, it was realized not because we were the heroes of our own story, nor because we earned the grace of our encounter, but because we were stuck with each other. I was not what Father Bamey was looking for on the third Sunday of every month, and he was not what I was looking for in a priest. Neither of us particularly got what we wanted from the goddess who masterminded the altar server schedule. And as it turned out, not getting what we wanted, being stuck with one another so long that understanding might arise in the very friction of our difference, not getting what we wanted was the only thing that made change possible for any of us. The wonderful, deep-spirited anti-racist organizer Mickey Scott Bay Jones has said that relationship is the sandpaper that wears away our resistance to change. Relationship is the abrasion that agitates enough to make a way forward. Relationship, consistent and ongoing encounter with people and perspectives different than our own. It smooths the way for the sacred even as it rubs us raw. And there is a holy abrasion of the Spirit that is born in deep relational encounters across differences. We, as congregations and as a movement, exist to be instruments of that holy abrasion. Those very encounters are our work. And yet we know that there are many ways to hide from the discomfort inherent in a holy abrasion. There are plenty of opportunities presented each and every day in the life of a congregation and among us to back away from the hard work of continually and repeatedly relating meaningfully to one another and the world. And one of them is to insist at any possible juncture that you get what you want out of the experience of congregational life. As if church is a short order menu and community is a product to be consumed on your terms in your time without making you uncomfortable or demanding a whole lot of you in the first place. It's the truth spoken in love, people. And one of the ways to block the holy abrasion that brings change is to imagine that both congregational life and religious liberalism itself are contests, complete with winners and losers. And if we don't get our way, well, we are wanderers, worshipers, and lovers of leaving, are we not? And who says we have to show up and put on the alb the next third Sunday? Who says we have to show up at all? The hero of my little story again, it wasn't me or Father Bamey. It was the liturgy itself. It was the church that asked us to keep showing up even when we honestly rather would not. It was the steady persistence of being stuck together long enough to truly become one another's people, even in spite of ourselves. Now, do not get me wrong. Just because I quietly kept showing up on third Sundays does not mean I am advocating for just taking the formative abrasion of relationship or the wounds of oppression without comment or resistance. For God's sake, do not think I'm coming out against a good fight. We should never be complacent or peaceful in the face of the powers, principalities, and supremacy systems that oppress. Oh no. And I will tell you that if Father Bamey and myself would meet under similar circumstances today, it likely wouldn't go down quite like it did back then. Over my years of service in the ministry, I have acquired what community organizers call an edge. And these days, if anyone has the temerity to discount me or undermine me based on their perceptions of my gender expressions or age, I am likely to offer up a withering stare and a string of $10 words that make it quite clear I do not bow before the patriarchy. Oh yes. If it happened today, there would be words. I am not one to speak against an honest fight, far from it. I think we need to lean into the real fights of our age. We need to do the work before us, not let another 50 years pass and ask again what in the world we have been doing all that time while the dream goes unrealized. We need to preserve our capacity for the precious gift it is, our capacity to engage. We need, friends, to keep it real. And keeping it real means admitting what we're really all here for in the first place. In spite of what every congregational satisfaction survey says. We did not come here for the coffee. And we did not even come for the great music. We don't even come for our awesome, excellent ministers. You don't. We come because we have a deep, aching need for an encounter with the holy that crosses our borders and expands our hearts. We come to be a part of something so much larger than ourselves. And we cannot do that holy work together unless we are really willing to set aside our own need to win and reach out our hands and seek the deeper understanding that comes with difference. Michelle Alexander has said that nothing will really change in this country unless we are willing to be a coalition united by revolutionary love that preserves the particularity of our individual paths and draws us in to meaningful relationship over the span of all that divides us. This coalition, Alexander says, is destined to fail if we never muster the courage to stand up for what we truly believe and build a multiracial, multi-ethnic, nonviolent army of artists, activists, teachers, healthcare workers, formerly incarcerated people, currently incarcerated people, parents, students, elderly people, academics, hourly workers, and everyone of conscience who is willing to bring an end to the politics of punitiveness and division in our days. We in the liberal church are called to help create an America that moves beyond the punitiveness and division of our days. And to you, the ones who gave me both my voice and my edge, I dare to say that we cannot enter into this coalition only on terms we choose for ourselves. We must enter into beloved community ready to have the terms changed in ways we ourselves could never have imagined, ready to show up even and especially when we do not get what we thought we wanted. Because neither consumerism nor conflict is the primary impediment to the efficacy of the liberal church in our age. Getting mad enough it merits an apology is not a sin at all in our tradition. That's just the sandpaper of the holy working its way along. No, the greatest impediment to the efficacy of the liberal church today is not the real fights and real failures we get into when we are doing hard work. It is the fake fights we waste our time on while our own people and the people of this world struggle to survive. And when I weep for want of courage these days, which I do, it is because I am personally not at all adequate to the urgent moral demands of our time. That's just being honest. You're not either on your own. But I also weep because I worry literally every day that in this moment of utmost urgency, we, the very ones the world has been waiting for, are wasting our capacity to build change on fake fights that distract us from the work at hand. We go over and over again, who's a humanist and who's a theist, as if they are mutually exclusive. Who got their way in what bylaw discussion and what color we should paint the church bathroom. So protected by our busyness that the real fights, the honest conversations, and the transformative sandpaper of real relationship presented to us Sunday after Sunday, week after week, slip right past us, and we remain thoroughly agitated but fundamentally unchanged. In the meantime, while we are fighting our safe, inwardly focused fights, the shamefully disparate infant mortality rates between black and white communities remains the most durable marker of racial inequality facing our nation today. In the meantime, another of Freddie Gray's killers gets off scot-free. In the meantime, nativism and isolationism seem poised to become the world's new normal. In the meantime, yes, the planet is bleeding and the future of religion in America is uncertain. And in the meantime, everything you and I and all of us care about is at stake. And people we loved who laughed and wept with us 1 week ago, take their rest in Earth's embrace today. All of this. And yet too often in our congregations, we cannot even meet each other's hands to pour the holy water of sacred work because we are too darn busy deciding whether we even want to be in this place together to start with. I take some cold comfort in the fact that we Unitarian Universalists do not have a corner on the market for such behaviors. For as long as two or more have gathered in the name of the Spirit, those two or more have fought some fake fights. You remember perhaps that classic old chestnut of a wedding reading from Corinthians, which says in part, "If I speak in the tongues of mortals or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing." That letter from the Apostle Paul to the early Christian community in Corinth has nothing whatsoever to do with the ushy-gushy romantic sentiment it is so often associated with at weddings. That is a letter from an overextended pastor with occasionally dubious judgment to a congregation whose leaders are in a constant state of fierce and unremitting conflict. And whether he was saintly or not, Paul was having none of it. Nor was the Hebrew leader who first declared in Proverbs that the primary thing in all this is not winning, it is wisdom. And so they said, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. The The collective wisdom of the ages reminds us that the stakes are high, and the ultimate prize we must reach out for in community is greater than the imagined divisions and trumped-up arguments that pull us apart. And here is a segue you won't see coming. You know in WrestleMania when professional wrestlers have fake fights? Sometimes they are actually at risk of getting hurt. And do you know what they do? Before the muscle snaps or the bones break in that fake fight, they tap out. They bang the mat. When the fake fight gets close to having real consequences, they tap out, and I tell you what, I am tapping out right now, and I invite you to join me. I am tapping out of every fake fight in our congregations and in our movement about getting what I want, or what you want, or what we think we want, because in this age the stakes are too high and we do not have time for fake fights anymore. I know and you know that the real conversations are waiting. Just beneath the surface of the fake fight is the real abrasion of the holy, the actual encounter, soul to soul, hand to hand, in which change is possible. A fake fight about the bylaws in the annual meeting is most often a carefully concealed real fight about the values that undergird our history coming into relationship with the values that might undergird our future. And if we can get past duking it out over the paint color in the church bathroom, we may encounter a pastoral window into the inner life of one whose voice in the world seems increasingly powerless. And all lives matter? Yes, that one. Chief among the fake fights and cover conversations that distract us from the work at hand, it is not about the slogan. More often than not, it is about our deep and abiding resistance to actually taking on the systemic white supremacy that eats at the heart of us and our culture. So let us have that conversation, the real one, the hard one that requires us to keep showing up. Let us have that conversation, and let us do it with edge and forgiveness, calling out and calling in, calling forth a new kind of community both in our congregations and in the world, the real fight, the real conversation about our history, our identity, our relevance, and our resistance. The real conversation beckons, and the world does not need another place for like-minded, liberal-leaning people to hang out together and fight about who's in charge. The world does not need a place where you or I or any single one of us gets what we want. What the world needs is a movement like ours to step more fully into our higher calling, to serve as an instrument for encounter with one another, with the holy, and with the world, so that we might love more fully and speak more truly and serve with greater efficacy in such a time as this. My hands reached up, and in time, the good Father's hands reached down, and the holy water did get poured Sunday after Sunday, month after month, and in and out of years. And my friends, my partners in faith, you must reach out to, starting with each other and expanding beyond each other to a coalition of border crossers led by voices at the margins, a coalition that might yet preach love amid the punitiveness and division of our days, even when you didn't get what you were hoping for, even when the sandpaper of relationship felt a little too rough. Even when you figure out how hard the real fight is actually going to be, even then, you must reach out to. And in this precious and fragile institution that is the church, you might find someone reaching right back, the holy made manifest in the closing space between your outstretched hands.